There's an ancient religious promise that sits right at the heart of a very, very modern conflict. In a recent conversation, Tucker Carlson and Mike Huckabee really dug into a fundamental question. Who actually has the right to the land of Israel? And their discussion, well, it cuts right to the core of history, faith, and identity.
So, where does this all come from? Well, the entire foundation for this claim goes way back to the book of Genesis. As Mike Huckabee puts it, God promised this land not just to one guy, Abram, but to all of his descendants, forever. You could almost call it the original theological land deed, and it is front and center in this whole debate.
Okay, but that ancient promise? It slams us right into a huge modern question, one that Carlson asks directly. Who are Abram's descendants today? And maybe more importantly, how on earth do you prove it? This one question is really what lights the fuse for the entire debate. So that brings us to the first major hurdle. How do you even begin to prove a direct link between someone living in the 21st century and an ancestor from nearly 4,000 years ago? This is the modern identity question that's at the heart of everything. The debate really kicks off with two completely opposite starting points. On one side, you have this idea of a continuous, unbroken line of Jewish people stretching all the way back. But on the other side, there's a direct challenge to that. A lot of modern Israel's leaders, including someone like Benjamin Netanyahu, have well-documented recent family histories in Eastern Europe, not the Middle East.
All right, so with those two positions staked out, the conversation naturally turns to evidence. I mean, if you're going to claim a continuous identity that spans millennia, what markers can you actually point to as proof?
Several things are put on the table as proof of this unbreakable connection: speaking the same language, worshiping the same God, and praying for Jerusalem. The argument is that these shared traditions are the proof in the pudding. But, and this is a big but, as we're about to see, every single one of these points gets challenged. So let's start with a language. One perspective sees the survival of Hebrew as this incredible miracle, a direct, living link to the past. The counterpoint? Well, it's a big one. Modern Hebrew is famously a resurrected language. In fact, most of the people who founded the modern state of Israel didn't actually speak it as their first language. And it's the exact same kind of tension when you get to religion. The claim is a shared worship of the same God. But the historical reality is that a lot of Israel's founders were secular. Some were even openly atheist. So it shows that the cultural evidence isn't quite as neat and tidy as it might seem at first glance. So once you start poking holes in those cultural markers, the conversation is forced to get, well, a lot more fundamental. If the claim isn't strictly about what language you speak or how you pray, then what is it based on? And this, right here, this is the absolute core tension of the whole discussion. Is the right to the land based on your bloodline, your ethnicity, or is it based on your belief system, your religion? The answer to that question changes everything. To really get what's at stake here, we need to talk about a key Israeli law, the right of return, or aliyah. This law grants people of Jewish ancestry the right to move to Israel and become citizens. The complication, though, is all in how you define Jewish ancestry. And this leads us to a central paradox in Israeli law that is just fascinating. On one hand, an atheist who is ethnically Jewish can claim the right of return. That suggests the whole thing is based on ancestry. And yet, there was a famous court case where an ethnic Jew who had converted to Christianity was denied that exact same right, which suggests it's all about faith. It kind of seems to be both and neither, all at once. The complexity here runs so deep that the speakers couldn't even agree on basic, verifiable facts. It just shows you how incredibly fraught this topic is, where even a simple data point can become a battlefield. Let me give you a perfect example. For instance, the claim was made that the Christian population is growing in Israel. That was immediately shut down with a counterclaim that actually there are way more Christians in Qatar. Now, the point here isn't to fact-check the numbers right now. It's to show that in this debate, there doesn't seem to be a shared set of facts to even start from. Look, a conversation disentangled was never going to wrap up with a neat little bow on top. And it doesn't. Instead, it ends by raising even deeper, more challenging questions, a lot of which are just left hanging in the air. And the unresolved issues are just staggering. What are the official borders exactly? Do people who convert to Judaism get the right of return? Does it matter which branch of Judaism they convert to? And what is the actual difference between a spiritual descendant and a blood descendant? These are massive legal and theological questions with no easy answers in sight. But the discussion doesn't just end in a pile of confusing questions. It actually builds to one final, really provocative idea, a proposal that tries to just slice right through all the thorny theology and history with a simple, modern tool. And this is the final, provocative question that Carlson leaves on the table. If the entire claim rests on being a descendant of Abram, why not use science to prove it? We've mapped the human genome. Why not do genetic testing on everybody in the region and find out who Abram's descendants really are? It's a stunningly simple, yet incredibly radical idea. And it leaves us with one last thought to chew on. In a conflict so deeply rooted in ancient identity, what role could, or even should, modern science play?